of the semester. And again, we welcome everyone here. So what you were watching there is you were watching some of the student-led startups coming out of the Rec Innovation Lab here at San Diego Miramar College. And we're so proud of all the work that they've been doing to get their startups up and running. And that's one of the resources that we provide to our students is the videos, these recordings, and we help them get what they need to actually launch these ideas, these businesses that are changing the world. So we're so proud of them, and we are so excited to start back up with our workshop series. And one of our favorite workshops every semester is the workshop that is presented by Gwen and Gabby. We absolutely love these presenters, and we're so grateful for them being here and for everything that you do for our student founders at the Rec Innovation Lab. And so I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to pass it over to our esteemed speakers, Gwen and Gabby, to tell us a little bit about yourselves and about what we're going to be learning today in our workshop at the Rec Innovation Lab. Welcome. So would you want to go ahead and take it away, Gwen or Gabby?
Sure. We can we're so excited to be here. And the first workshop for the semester. And we're just going to go ahead and kick it off because as part of our presentation, we do introduce ourselves a little bit. So I'll let Gabby go ahead and start sharing.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here, spending your Monday afternoon with us. And just give me a quick thumbs up if you can see the screen. We can. Okay, great.
I have a question.
Yes.
What specific change is about based on entrepreneurship?
Great question. Hold on. We're going to address that in just a minute.
You're all about it.
I love the spirit. All right. So welcome to Facilitating Change. Again, thank you for having us kick off the series of workshops this semester. And we missed you guys. So thanks so much. And here we go. Facilitating Change. So a little bit about ourselves. My name is Gabby Alvarez-Pollack, and I am the CEO and founder of GSNL Consulting. We do training and development solutions for organizations, and oftentimes come and help entrepreneurs to get their business up and running, and go around doing learning and development and executive coaching. And in partnership with
me. So I'm Gwen Franco. And I am an entrepreneur. So I work for Hyatt, and I'm a part of the global talent management team. I'm a organizational effectiveness manager, and I created Craft Leadership as my brand and my company within Hyatt. So I'm an entrepreneur. However, kind of, since it is mine, kind of use it as my business that I grow slowly but surely externally as well.
All right. Excellent. And with that, we're going to go to the next slide. So welcome everybody again. And in the chat, if you will, to get us started, type what type of change or growth are you currently facing? And I know that there's a pending question, which is like, what type of change are we talking about? And really today we're talking about change in general, and it could be a personal change. It could be a change in your business. And in a little bit, Gwen's going to walk us through what is this idea of being a change maker and why is change, the word change, so important. So for now, without overthinking it, just type in the chat, what is like one change or what a type of change that you are facing right now that comes to your mind.
So we have Ashley, who's put in the chat, navigating a career change. That's a very big change, Ashley. Thank you for sharing that. Crystal has put professional development. Okay, growth. Samantha has put moving abroad. Sarah is graduating soon. That's a life change. Christine has put education into your career journey. So that transition. Wonderful.
All right.
Growth path to product. Jolie has put graduating soon, and someone else has put moving to a new city. So once again, relocating.
Right.
So we have a lot. We have a lot of personal change that was shared. And we have a little bit related to the business and such. So that's interesting to see. And we'll discuss all those parts together shortly.
All right. So when we talk about change, usually, thank you for sharing all of that, and we'll use them back in our conversation in a few minutes. But when we talk about change, or when we talk about starting something, like all of you are as part of the REC Innovation Center, we usually think that the road ahead looks like this, right? It's a clear path, straight line. We have the horizon and our vision over there, and it's going to go smooth this way. And what most of the times happens, I say in my slides sometimes, but what often happens is that the road really looks like this. What do you think when you see this image?
The reason why I think I image this is because in this life, we always expecting something easy in our lives, but when it comes to reality, there's always a twist and turn to shape our lives better.
Right. Yes. Always a twist and turn. I love that term. I mean, there's always something unexpected that might happen. There is always change, right? In the things that we plan sometimes. And it often looks like a windy road or a curvy road ahead. And it might be easy or not, but it's very different sometimes than what we thought it was, especially if we think about what we all have been going through in the last couple of years, right? A lot of uncertainty, a lot of curves ahead, and sometimes we don't know when it will end. So the reason we introduce with this is because here's what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about introducing change and what is it that we talk about when we talk about change. Now, Gwen and I manage change at scale within organizations, a lot of the times around business, operations, people, process. But the principles that we're going to share with you and that we use with our clients, and Gwen internally with his team, with her team members, are not very different, or actually are very applicable to what we do in real life with other kinds of changes. So we're going to introduce you to a concept or one of the tools that we use that's called the change curve, and how to navigate through change and all of the emotions that come with that. And towards the end of the presentation today, then we will also share some tools and resources for you. How does that sound?
Sounds interesting.
Sounds interesting.
Sounds good.
Very good. All right. So ready? Here we go.
All right. I'm going to speak to this one right here. I'm going to talk about, Richard, I think I'm going to answer your question here where you were asking about what change are we talking about here? So I would like you all to know that change is your life. Change is the part of everything, both personally and professionally. And when it comes to being an entrepreneur, think about how whatever it is that you are looking to offer, whether it's a product, it's a service, or anything, you are looking to do something differently. You are looking to enhance something or offer something that doesn't exist. That in and of itself is a change. So from being an entrepreneur, you are automatically a change maker. So the rest of the journey will always include change. And there's a lot of parts of that change that will come that are going to be kind of things that you can anticipate, right? Which we'll call those novel problems. They'll be when you're growing. The company is growing and you have to hire people. That's a change. When you say you get funding and you get a huge order, like those kinds of things are all problems that you can kind of anticipate that are part of the cycle of the growth of your business. Then there's going to be other forms of things that you will not see, and we're calling them never seen before. For example, what happened during COVID, how everybody had to abruptly shift into virtual. That wasn't something that we planned for or we had anticipated. So there will be things that come out of nowhere. Right now in the labor market, there's a shortage of the workforce tremendously, right? There is increased demand, and it's not something that you would have been prepared for. So these are other changes that will impact your business and that you will have to navigate through. And these are just the changes that we're talking about are in relation to business changes, but earlier from the examples that were presented, there's a lot of also personal changes that will influence both personally that you experience and those that are part of the business that also influence the change that happens within the business. So when we say change is your life, it is truly your life. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing because from change can come growth. Richard, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Great.
All right. So here's one of the tools. Now, if you Google books or articles about change, there's millions of things that you will find. Well, maybe not millions, but a ton of information out there about change. There's the classics, about operational and business change, and then a lot in personal development as well. So lots of resources out there. So where do you even start to learn about change? And, why is change? Well, before I go into the change curve, let me ask you as a whole, why is talking about change so important? Anybody?
Because it helps us grow.
Okay. Because of growth. Fabulous. What else?
It always happens.
It always happens. Yes. True. I couldn't hear that last one.
I think it's background noise.
Okay. Yeah. So growth, it usually change leads to growth. It always happens. We know that already. What else?
I think it reduces the fear.
What do
The
you mean?
fear of what? Could you tell more?
Yeah, the fear of change. So when things are changing, you might not always know what's coming at you. So being able to talk and discuss about it kind of helps smooth it.
Yeah.
Right. Interestingly enough, in all of the work that we do for professional development, change always is a request that I get in my business all the time. Help us with change. Help us, implement change. So fear, that's a big one. That was John, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fear, yes.
Yeah.
So,
And what I wanted to add to that, sorry, Gabby, was simply that from John's statement about the more that you talk about it, the more prepared you are for change. That has to do, I think it's change in general, and then it has to do with whatever the change is that's happening. But I will share that a lot of research is coming out about right now with the pandemic, all the change that had to happen for so many people, both personally and professionally, that really just informed us more of how receptive and how ready and such people are for change organizationally based on their company, just personally and things like that. So it's brought more attention to people saying we need to pay attention to this because we weren't as ready as we or open to change as we thought we were.
right, we were kind of forced into it, weren't we?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to share with you today, and it's not the only tool out there, there's tons of resources, is this idea of the change curve. And if anything, as you have seen when we prepare these workshops for you, there's a lot of personal awareness that takes place, that if we only did that, even if that's the only thing that we learned today, that is great in terms of how do we then overcome that fear or that emotion that comes with change. So it's not news for any of you that every time that even when we hear the word change, right, there's a feeling that we experience. It's like, oh my gosh, or there's this anticipation. What do you mean change? And so change in itself, the word by itself, but also the event of change, has an emotional response. And a lot of resources have concluded into these 7 different stages of change, if you will, or the 7 different emotions. And so we'll go over them, and then we have a couple of activities planned for you following this curve change. So first of all, well, the model is based on the Kubler-Ross model. So you can Google that, and there's tons of public information for that. So when change happens, so let's say you get news of, yes, you were accepted into the rec center for this program. Amazing change, right? Great news. There's an emotional reaction to that, shock or surprise, depending on what the change is, right? Shock, surprise at the event. It could be super excitement, or it could be like, well, I didn't get accepted, for example, or I didn't get my grant, or I didn't get the participation in my class as I was hoping. Whatever the change might be, then there's initial shock. From there, we usually go into denial or disbelief. I can't believe this is happening to me, or I can't believe this happened. Forget about happening to me. It's just in general, I can't believe this is happening. Or what is the evidence? Why do we need to do this? Why do we need to change, right? A lot of resistance in this particular phase and emotional reaction to change. Then usually we go into frustration. Especially when it's a change at work or something that's a surprise. Let me put it that way. Not necessarily just at work, personally too. When it's a surprise and when we don't have a lot of control over it, and then usually we go through these reactions of denial and frustration, right? So recognizing that the things are different, and that sometimes it drives into anger, a lot of emotions in that stage. We call it frustration. Then it goes into depression, right? A lot of the times, depending on the magnitude of the change or the speed of the change, we go into low energy. We don't know what's coming. We don't see light at the end of the tunnel. We're like immersed in the chaos. And then we the tendency is to have low energy. And again, these are labels for the stage of depression. From that, usually it's like, okay, we kind of hit bottom and then we start coming out. And then comes experiment. We might say, okay, well, this is not that bad after all. Let me try it this way. Or, okay, I guess, I have to kind of like go along with it, or let's go with the flow. And you start, little by little getting engaged into accepting the change. Then comes a decision point. And the decision point is, okay, either I get on the bus or I get out of the bus. Or, what is it that I need to do to fully participate and engage in this change piece? And last but not least is integration. That's when full adoption and integration of the change happens, whether it is in your personal life or at work. And then, the flow, then it's there. It's like there's the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're already entering the light already.
So, Gabby, I have a question. Is this is this a linear journey? This looks like it almost looks like a board game, like a game of Monopoly. So does everyone go have to go through each phase? How does that work?
Well, I will say that Monopoly can take forever, right? So it's not really, but it's not really like Monopoly. And no, it's not linear. I mean, this is a way of expressing or explaining rather all of the different emotions and stages that happen through change. But no, I mean, I had people that say, man, it's like I kind of go through these like several times in one day. So it's like, I hear you. Sometimes I do too. It's not necessarily linear. They all are part of the initial, reaction to change. And actually, I mean, I don't have a pointer, I don't think. But if you see from experiment to integration, that line actually, one day I'm going to make that graphic, or I'm going to change the graphic, because from experiment to integration, it even goes like super twistier. I don't know if that's a word, but it just like, it goes like this, because that's when you start trying new things and you can go back and forth. And when you start going into, yes, I see light at the end of the tunnel, a lot of things can happen in that as well. And then you might go back to initial shock or denial. Sometimes you skip denial and frustration, right? If it's something that you planned and it's coming, you're already prepared for that. But so the short answer to your question is no, it's not linear. And it could even be a cycle. You can go over the stages, and, go forward, go backwards. It's a very dynamic model, if you will. Good question, Gwen.
Oh, why, thank you. I'm learning too.
Yay. We always do, don't we? All right. So we have a question for all of you right now. And Crystal, if you can launch the poll. Our question for you today is, where are you personally today in this curve of change? Which stage are you? Where are you today? I think the poll is launched. I can't see it. But...
yeah, it should be launched.
Okay, I can see it. So pick one. Where are you now? Yeah, I can't see if, are people answering?
Yeah,
Oh,
Crystal,
answer.
how many people are answering?
Yeah, we've got, let's see. Is there a way to share it so that people can see it?
It should be a way to share that.
10.
I think once you
Oh,
close
do I
the
have to share my screen maybe?
No, as soon as you close the poll, it'll share it.
Oh, okay.
and then
Okay.
it'll say share results.
Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I see.
exactly.
6, 7,
So how many people left are there
10,
left?
16, 22. We've got 24 people that have answered, so I think that's about right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and stop the poll then.
Okay.
There we go. We can see it now.
Okay.
Can everybody see it? Nope, you have to
No.
hit share results.
Share results. Okay.
Share results, yeah. There we
Oh.
go. Now we can see it. Okay. All right. So look at this, and everybody can see it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. 25%. We have a tie. 25% of you are in frustration, and 25% of you are in decision. That's so interesting. And then we have another tie, depression and experiment, 17%, and then shock and integration. We're over the shock in this group. Okay, I like that. And then
We have nobody in denial.
nobody in denial. Love it. That's why you're entrepreneurs, yes? And then we have integration at 8%. All right, so what do you think when you see these results? What comes to your mind?
A lot of people are frustrated. And then like
Lot
the
of
beginning
folks.
processes kind of like
Say
the
that.
middle.
Oh, for starters, for me, the reason why I picked decision is because I want, like, there are possibilities that when it comes to time management, it comes from a decision where I can just decide what can I put on time and effort just to do it right. That's the reason why I picked decision.
Good. Good.
Yeah. And Julie had said that a lot of people are frustrated. And so maybe it's because they're in initial stages and such.
It could be a lot of different emotions in that stage when, things might not be happening. I mean, we might be in the middle of that curvy road again, right? We thought it was going to be a long, and straight, maybe not long, but a straight road, and it's windier than we thought. So a lot of frustration comes with that. Yes.
Yeah,
And,
the learning curve.
yeah.
Learning curve. Absolutely.
And then we have a comment in the chat, which I think is what's so great about the rec community, and that it supports the statement is many face the same challenges through this journey. So yes, absolutely. And that's what the rec brings, that sense of community helps in getting through that.
Sure, absolutely. Which is the perfect segue to our next poll. And I think there's another comment in the chat about failure. So we can talk about failure in a minute, because change does not necessarily mean failure, right? Change, when it's not planned and when it's a surprise, it could, provoke, it produces shock and denial and frustration. But change in itself is not synonymous, or it's not equal to failure. I'm not sure. I think Kevin's talking about multi-billion-dollar failures and things that result in a good thing. So of course, a failure could be a result of a change, or could bring change with it. But just to clarify, change in the context of change happening, it's not always equal to failure. Does that make sense?
Well, you have to look. So basically, most startups get stuck in the ideation phase.
Sure.
And then in order to move the needle, you have to be doing things. And some of those things are going to be wrong. It's the only way. So it's a synonym for me for change is basically getting out there, making mistakes, finding out what works. If it doesn't work, try something new. But that's been the thing that resonates the most when I see these types of graphs, is like the Jeff Bezos quote.
Sure. No, thanks for providing the context. I think that's exactly the right mindset, right? Yeah. And now it's the way you look at change, and at the end, the way you look at things can also change the impact of things. So absolutely, you go out and you experiment, and then you can plan for it to work or not to work, and then decide your action after that. Absolutely. So let's go to the next poll. And the next poll, we're asking a similar question, still on the chart.
Can I throw in a question?
Yeah.
I learned that by one quote from Robert Kiyosaki. Failure makes us successful for the ones we don't know. Something we can actually learn.
Could you
Something we
repeat
can actually, failure could actually make us feel successful because when it comes to learning the mistakes, we can actually learn something about our own past to limit our own mistakes that doesn't repeat the mistake ever again. That's why I learned from Robert Kiyosaki.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen it like with the Bezos thing. Like he says, you know, like it's over billions of dollars worth of failures. And if you search for this, some people look at it like it's a negative thing, but it's actually the change required in order to move forward. Like there's going to be mistakes. And I think the biggest mistake as a startup is what I've seen, especially is if people just, they don't get out too much. Like you have to be talking to people virtually, in person. There has to be some kind of like, you have to be talking to people nonstop and you know, coming up with new ideas and proposing new things. And not everybody's going to get along with you the whole time. That's just the nature of the beast. But if you know what you want, you have to be getting out to these tech coffees, the startup SDs, you know, this kind of stuff is really good too. But just moving the needle on your own, you know,
Right.
that's the thing I urge is basically for all these startups not to get stuck in ideation. Like you have a great idea, it doesn't mean anything. And I've had this talk with my advisors too, is you actually have to physically get out and do something.
Yeah.
You know, it's the only way.
Absolutely. And that's that experimentation phase, right? Like let's between experimentation and decision, let's make the decision to get out. I mean, we later on, we're going to see the 4 P's of communicating change. So when you intentionally go out and do it, you can plan for it and you can say, okay, this might work or it might not work. And then you're already preparing yourself for that. And that changes, touche, that changes the whole perspective of the idea. Absolutely. Great.
I would like to share. So what I hear a lot from Richard and Kevin is there's this concept of failure, right? Of how we view failure and the value of it. So, but if you look behind that, what you're trying to say is the focus isn't necessarily failure. The focus is to change your perspective on failure. And so that's where the change is. It's a change in perspective. So changes sometimes aren't actual like tangible things that happen. Sometimes it just has to do with approaches and your perspective. And so I think that's the change that you're identifying there. We're thinking of it more from like the actual what, which is the failure in doing things and innovating and trying new things. But I think you're identifying a very clear change that helps entrepreneurs build their startups tremendously. But it has to do with a perspective. And I'll tell you, a lot of people have a hard time changing the way that they look at failure.
Right.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I think that like a lot of people that get discouraged when something bad happens or something that happens that they didn't think it would happen, but that's just evidence of change because like not everybody is going to agree with you on your journey. And then as long as in the back of your head, you always know that you're pushing the needle forward, there's going to be, you know, things that don't go your way. And it's just one of those things like the number of hours you put in, don't get discouraged, don't give up, you know, especially with this curve here you can't be living off feelings the whole time. I mean, that's how most of us do. But when you have it high, you're going to have a low, you know, like we just launched something a couple Fridays ago for quantum computing and it was a high. And then after that, you have to stick with it. It's like what's the ball? When the ball goes up, it has to go down kind of law of physics thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're presenting in the curve is exactly that. Every time there's a change or there's something new, then you go through this. And sometimes, of course, when you prepare for it, some of the stages are, you know, shorter than the others, but you always go through this, right? It didn't go as planned. I'm spending a lot more hours. Don't get discouraged. That's a great thing that you have to have in mind. Yet just recognizing where you are in the curve is great awareness to then help you move past that, right? And continue then in the cycle of what's the light at the end of the tunnel? What's my vision? What's the final outcome? Absolutely. Now, with that, you both said something incredibly important, and that's our poll, which is right now, I think, launched. Is so you identified where you are in the curve. What about your team? Or Kevin, to your point, it's like, what about those? And your team might be, or the definition of the team for this particular context is, who are you working the closest with, right? It could be your vendors, it could be your advisors, it could be your employees if you already have a team, it could be your partners, whoever that group of people is. Think of them when you answer this question. Where do you think they are? Where is your team today in this curve of change? And we'll tell you in a minute why we're asking this. So I guess I need to answer too, right?
So please complete the poll.
Yeah. We have about 18 out of 26, 19.
I'll give it another second. I think we can share results now.
Send it. Okay. There we go.
All right, look at this. So it looks a little bit different, right? And this is our own perception of where our team is, which is fine. Again, we don't have anybody in the shock phase. That's great. We have a little bit of people on denial. And then we have, again, the top two, frustration and experimentation. A very little group of people in depression and nobody in the decision chart. And some, almost the same amount of people, or the same percentage of responses for integration. So when you see these results and they're different, you know, they're pretty much aligned, but they're different. What do you think of this?
Well, aren't they always going to be behind? Because like, if you're the one that, you know, did the patent or did all this early stuff, doesn't it take a while for them to catch up? That's what I'm finding.
It can, absolutely. Absolutely, it can. And there are some teams where you don't have that lag, right? Everybody's moving at the same rhythm, but it definitely can be that they're falling behind. What's important about this is not necessarily how apart the stages are. Well, but how do we then recognize that? A lot of the times what happens with change is we forget to ask, or we forget to recognize where is our team. So Kevin, if you are already in decision and integration, but your team is in shock and frustration, then what's going to happen, right? Then the communication, the collaboration, the speed of the process might suffer because you're not in alignment. The objective is not necessarily to be in alignment. You both need to be where you need to be. The objective of this exercise, particularly today, is how do we make sure that we know? A lot of self-awareness. Where am I? Where's my team? Because just recognizing, if we didn't show you anything else, and we do have a couple more things to show you, but if we didn't show you anything else today, it's this realization. If you see the two charts of the two results, are you having those conversations? Do you know where your team or your partners or your vendors are, and where are you? Because just having that awareness and that conversation on where you are can lead to more productive conversations, to more productive actions, to looking at failure in a different way, to really, you know, focusing on success. And just those two, you know, can be magical as you realize where they are. So it's not right or wrong where everybody is. It's just, do we know where we are? And then what do we do about it? Does that make sense?
What I'll add to that as well is that how there's no necessarily no right or wrong of where people are. There's also phases you need people to be in order for the project or the change to move along. So if you're not moving them along according to the project timeline, that delays the completion or even the success completely in adoption of whatever this change will be. So that reflection is tremendous for yourself and for others who are supporting you.
Absolutely. All right, so with that, let's move into a little bit of participation. What ideas then do you have to move through these phases, either for you or for your teams? And I think there's some activity in the chat.
Yes, Dr. Cherie has a great comment here. It says, if you're in the initial phases and your brain trusts, you consult with them for key knowledge is already there. There's growth for yourself to align, collaborate effectively. Absolutely. Absolutely. Alignment is wonderful. Alignment is key for success. So change can be a much easier process.
Yeah, then that way when we hear the word, we're not just like so averse to like, no, I don't want to change.
I mean, a lot of times it's paperwork. Like people put it off, I've put it off, and you assume things are fine, but you don't know what everybody's thinking until you ask them to do something that you need them to. And that's where you have like equity and, or either having them being a technical employee. So that sometimes marks a change, is actually filling out forms. When I went down to the city administration building in San Diego to fill CEO, it completely changed everything. Like my perspective of what my role is, So sometimes filling out forms is necessary, and a lot of people put it off because they say,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're just a startup," whatever that means. So,
yeah, how much do you know what you need to do to either you go heads on to the change and just do it? Well, not just do it, but do it. Or do you plan for it? Or how do you plan for it? Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think right now with the 4 Ps, we're going to talk about that part of planning for it. I think we can connect that to a real theme that we've heard today, which is around failure. So we'll bring that in right now while we're talking about the 4 Ps.
So here are the 4 Ps. Go for it, Gwen.
Okay, so the 4 Ps are a wonderful way for you to have great clarity on the change that you are embarking on. And changes right now are probably much bigger changes, right, when it comes to establishing and growing your startup, but there are minimal changes that can happen as well. So just think of anything when you always want to ask yourself the question to start off, why are we changing? You really want to understand why, what is the purpose of your change? And you want to be able to articulate that really well. Because you're going to use this to speak to others about the change. And you want people to understand what the change is going to look like and feel like. What is it actually like? If we can achieve what we want to, what is that experience going to be like? And be very, very specific so people can understand that. How are we going to get there? What is the plan to get us from where we are today to that state that we are looking at, that we're picturing? And then who do we need to explain this to so they can help us get to that point? So you have to think of, when you ask the question, why are we changing? The next question you need to ask also are, who is this change going to impact? Who is going to behave differently, work differently? And that's your audience. And that's why you want to be able to articulate to them all of the information prior, because that's how you get people's buy-in. That's how you get people's what's in it for me, so that they then go through this change process faster, much more aligned, and have greater motivation. I would say that another reason why people also are not as accepting of failure and such is because whatever their change process is, they're probably not as informed or don't have as much motivation and such. So to think of, I just went through all that and then I have to do it again, that all impacts also people's, I'll say, energy towards failure. So when you have these 4 Ps really clearly defined, they really help move people along that learning curve. Or if you have different groups of people in different areas, you reference back to these things to help you move them along. You may have some people that are in denial, you go back to your purpose. If you have some people who are frustrated, you go back to the plan and redefine what is the plan, what is it they need along the way, things like that. Does anybody have any questions or comments with this?
Now we're gonna kind of move it along, and then we'll allow for questions at the end, if you will. We're kind of this is so exciting that we're almost out of time. Anyways, so a couple of important things just to move us along, and then we'll go back to your questions. So the 4 Ps, the idea is like in real estate: location. For change, communication at every stage of the change. So we found this data that it's about accepting change. And the main point that we want to make here, or we want to remind you of, the more involved somebody is in the change, the faster the acceptance to change. So you see it in the chart, right? You know, when involvement is high, then speed is also high. When involvement is not so high, then of course it goes to slower adoption, slower decisions, maybe a lot more of those emotions. So it's a simple chart, but just the main message here is involve all of those who you might not think this impacts. Just make sure, don't assume that they're not going to be impacted. Just, you know, share and communicate.
Yeah.
And this is what Gwen was talking about. There's a very practical application of understanding the chart. While not everybody's going to go in a linear way through the chart, while not everybody's going to be in the same place in the chart, here's some tips of how do you approach each one of those phases. So of course, at the beginning, in denial, it's the status quo, right? And or shock. So shock, denial. What do you need to do? Well, communicate the information, right? Share as much information as possible so that people are okay and then they can move to the next phase or the next couple of phases. When we have disruption, which is the change itself, usual emotions are anger and fear. And what do you need to do there? Well, watch, listen, support. This is a great place to ask questions. There, you know, not only continue with the information, but ask. Do not assume. Don't assume that people are already on board or they're not afraid or they're just in the same place with you. Ask before you assume. Next one is exploration, where the reaction typically starts, you know, being acceptance. Give it time. That's exactly what Kevin was saying. Give it time to explore and to test. This is all of that additional mini curve inside of the curve, right? Test and learn. Perfect place when you're already accepting the change, perfect place to test, explore, and if it doesn't work, then something else will, right? And then last but not least, and this is one of the stages that we all forget, especially when we're entrepreneurs and at the beginning when we don't have a big team, is once we have the commitment, once we are in the integration phase or the decision phase, we forget to celebrate. Big important part of change. Celebrate. You got the paperwork done. Yay, let's celebrate. Okay. All right. And with that, we are going to allow some questions. Some of the tools, there's a lot of tools about change. We talked about one of the tools that we know of. And we also wanted to remind you that there's recordings of all of these workshops that we have done and shared with you here at the REC. Those in themselves become great tools. Sorry for the shameless plug, but they become really good tools to walk through that curve and through the change. And that's why this was like in the series that we built for entrepreneurs, change was the last one because it's, you know, it builds from one to the other. We talked about managing emotions and making them into actions. How do we go about making creative decisions? You learned about your builder profile, which even informs you how you're just by your personality, if you love change and if you don't love change, right? I have a friend that loves change so much that every day she finds a new way to get to work. Well, not recently because we're working from home, but you know, she works in a different place of the house every day because she just loves change. And then working with others, conflict resolution. Look at them. They're, I think Crystal already shared where some of these recordings are, but we can give you a lot more tools. But this in itself and what the REC is offering is great. Are great tools in themselves.
And we appreciate that shameless plug, Gabby. We appreciate that. So questions, we have questions from the audience while we still have a little bit of time left.
So in early stage startups, how do you suggest getting levels of involvement of people up around you that aren't like fully compensated?
Well, there's different ways, but what do you mean when they're not fully compensated?
Well, the paperwork's not done. They're not fully funded. You know, like a lot of times everybody's volunteering, those types of things. So besides just you know, rainbows, puppies, and chocolate. It's not always going to be like that, you know? So
Yeah, I think
you
what
have
he's
to
saying
put
is
your-
that people don't get paid in the beginning, right? So, right?
right.
Well, why are they participating? Right? What's the purpose? What's in it for them? Is there a greater purpose at the end? And can they commit to that purpose? Right. So when you have a volunteer organization, there's something in them, right? There's something in the participants that they're getting out of the volunteer work. So what's that light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, and I think, Gabby, for a lot of entrepreneurs in the beginning, a lot of the our initial startup team, we just none of us are getting paid when we first start, even if we're a for-profit business. So,
Right.
how do you
Yeah.
motivate? How do you? Yeah.
Yeah,
'cause
and I think.
these-
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
Tanya. Go ahead. Was that Tanya or was that Kevin?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and I think that's part of, I think that's part of this conversation, and I think it's also a little bit of a separate conversation around that. I know that what's in it for me sounds like it's not necessarily enough, but that's what you have to appeal to when it comes to volunteers. And what I'll say in the messaging of what's in it for me, it has to be very personalized to that person. Whatever your purpose, your motivator is, may not be exactly the same for them. So it's really a matter of personalizing it for what does this person want to get out of it and how can I offer that? So you need to find that out. But I think that sense of inspiring and motivating others would be a great topic of conversation for us to come back to. I think it's very aligned also to the power of purpose and around that. So
Yeah, I mean, you when we start a company, there's something else that you believe in, and yes, of course, we're in it to make money and to make a living, of course, 100%. Now, while you get there, there's something that you believe, right? You believe in your talent, you believe in your idea, you believe that it will provide something to society, to your group, to your whatever that is. So usually, I mean, at least it was my experience when I started my business. Yeah, I didn't get paid, or I get paid like half of what I should get paid. But there was something else that was driving me to still do the work, because I believe that at some point, of course, it's going to pay off. Right. And so, yes, Gwen's right. There's a lot more into motivation. The one thing that I would say, it needs to come from within. If they believe in the cause, then chances are they will do the hard work, and they will sweat the good. I was going to say something anyway. They will sweat with you to get to the finish line. And yeah, that is part of that shock and reaction. I mean, what's the reality? What's the information?
yeah, and I'll say that a lot of we see today, right? There's a lot of labor market shortages, right? And people are being paid and they still don't connect with the purpose, with the work and such that they're doing. And they're not willing to do it. And that's why we're experiencing this in the labor market. And these people are paid. So that's not necessarily your solution. Your solution is not necessarily going to be paying them. And we're realizing that more and more. So I think there's a unique, we're learning about it. I don't know that we have the answer quite yet. I don't know that people have figured it out for themselves, but we know there's a tremendous shift, and anything that people are driven to do right now has to be something deeper for them.
I know that's probably not the practical answer that you were hoping for, Kevin, but I mean,
No, it's exactly right, because she's right, because like I'll put in the emails, thank you for your continued support. Some do, some don't. And then believe in the cause, kind of go back to the whole purpose of the whole project, why they signed on to begin with, and try to find that out,
Yeah.
and
And like we said, it could be different. So sorry, I was just saying, it could be different for each person. Some people really may be the cause of the business. For somebody else, it may be tremendous just opportunity to make an impact and develop themselves. So it's so unique for everybody. It's a matter of finding that out and then you using that.
I wonder if there's a solution of, I wonder if there's a solution to that cause when it comes to part-time getting a job.
What do you mean, Richard?
Like because of the between having a COVID impact and most of the people are like, don't want to do other jobs. They just want to stay in their own homes because of the Bitcoin. Because of the Bitcoin that they want to make more money. That's the reason why there are like, more jobs that are available that may impact the business.
Yeah, you're going to have a distribution of people as far as level of a commitment, especially with her bar graph. They'll more likely adapt to changes if they're already more involved. So, yeah, I mean, some people are just going to be in it for fame, and they'll just do whatever they feel like doing. So, I agree. It isn't solely paperwork as far as signing people up, paying them, giving them shares of the company. There's other things that they're interested in. So once your company gets to a certain level, I mean, it'll be impossible to keep track of, pleasing every single person, to keep them.
Yeah.
That said, though, Kevin, there is you can look at what in the aggregate, what's the highest probability of making people happy, making people motivated, and there's so much research on this. And pay is very, very, very low down on the scale. Intrinsic motivation is much higher, and there are things that you can do to the job itself to help with the motivation, the intrinsic motivation of the job, just by ways that you create the position, structures and tasks and things like this. So there are things you can do. Yeah.
And I would add to that, also Kevin and Richard, I would add to that playing to people's strengths, sometimes works very well. Like, what are people talented to do, and build your team around that, and clear expectations. If they know that they're not going to get paid for a certain amount of time, then it's up to them, and it's their choice and their decision. And to Tanya's point, actually, I think the research says that there's at least 10% of your team is not going to be, or in a big organization, study after study has shown that at least 10% of the population is not going to be happy with the decision the organization makes. My company is a micro company, so I can't afford that risk. But at the same time, as I work with larger organizations, you can totally see that. The idea is that the more you move those who are, big adopters or great adopters of the change or the implementation, then the others will come. So it's not about making a popular decision, but what is the decision that serves the business better?
Yeah. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, what you will always have is people exist. Think about yourself and how you even approach change, right? There's some changes that you're incredibly receptive to. You're like, this is great. If, I don't know, hypothetically, you were going to go somewhere on vacation and the vacation location is changed, you're like, I'm in. Yeah, no big deal. I'm going on vacation, right? But think about when change is imposed onto you and what that experience is like. I always like to think of my childhood when you didn't have much of a say, right? Your parents would say, we're moving, you're going to change school. And how did you feel about that change, right? You didn't have control or say. So think about that experience for yourself. Think about that for others. And that all helps support ultimately in all the change process that you're going through. And that was the big key takeaway that we talked about, is really understanding it for yourself and then for others around you.
And that's a perfect place. Thank you so much, Gwen. That's a perfect place to wrap up here. We have about 2 minutes. I know a lot of people are getting to other classes. So I just want to leave with just some housekeeping. So how people can access the survey, Crystal, if you want to just quickly go over that, and how they can access the recording again, if they'd like to come back or sign up for more workshops with Gwen and Gabby.
Yeah, give me just a second. Let me put the link back here.
Okay, so Crystal is going to be sharing a link in the chat. And which link are you sharing right now?
So this is the link to take the survey. So
okay, and then
okay.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say this link will take you to a survey. You can leave feedback for our awesome presenters, and we also have some prizes at the end of the semester for those of you that are students here at San Diego Miramar College.
Thank you so
and
much.
I'll also put the recording to our previous workshops as well. So if you want to go back, and we'll also have this one, this is being recorded, so this will be posted on the website also.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone for coming. Gwen and Gabby, do you want to leave us with a thought as we go on to the rest of our week?
Oh, the final thought is, like, of course, don't hesitate to contact us if you need resources, if you want additional ideas. We are happy to share and to continue to support you in your growth.
Yeah, and I think my greatest message is we love, love, love this community. And it's our honor to support all of you who are change makers and looking to make the world a better place. So thank you.
Thank you, Gwen and Gabby. Thanks
Thank you for coming.
We'll see everybody. Take care,
Professor,
everyone.
how do we turn
Bye.
in our homework?
I'll come. We'll go ahead and end the recording, and then I can answer any questions on that.